All right. We're back. We're bringing that music a bit in the background where we get things going. Great to see everybody. It's a lovely Friday. We're going to have a pretty special show for you today. This is going to be fun. We're going to get to meet Brian, the other half of the Telos Culture crew. We're going to be talking all about his one of the projects he's heavily involved in, Discussion.app. Who we're planning to do a lot of collaborations with discussions on the Telos Culture stuff in the near future, so it's going to be fun. Ooh, we got some extreme echo. So let me know if it's going away as I turn this down. If you're still hearing it, let me know. Good to see you, Laxon. Great to have you here. This is going to be a pretty fun event. If you guys are tuning in, let us know in the comments where you're coming from. I'm coming to you from Quebec in Canada. We're going to have Brian tuning in from Toronto. Toronto's pretty wild today, but maybe we'll get into that once he gets in here. The apocalypse might be here, starting in the GTA. But no, it's going to be a fun one. Before we do, though, as always, remember to subscribe to Telos Culture. Hit the like button. Smash it. Bust a hole in your computer screen, smashing that like button, and share this with your friends. And of course, as always, vote for Telos Culture as a block producer candidate on the Telos mainnet. We are almost there, super close. We need about 7 million, maybe, I think, more votes, maybe 8 million. We're pretty close, though. So we're really grateful for all the support we've gotten so far. All right. Without further ado, let's bring in Brian. Brian, how's it going?
Great. How are you, Liam?
Doing lovely. How's the internet there? How's life?
It's back now, so that's good.
Oh, internet came back on?
Yeah, internet's back on now. But it was a struggle from, I think, maybe 4 hours ago. The internet was just out the whole time, and I think a large part of my community and city had troubles.
Yeah.
Their internet, cell phones, and even like banking.
Yeah, all of
transfers weren't going through.
It was like all of the Rogers network, which is like one of the two major internet providers in Canada, went down. And I don't think it was just Ontario. Like, I think the reason my internet was good is because I'm not Rogers. I think like
across. I think it's nationwide, actually. I've heard news from the East Coast that their internet was also down.
Yeah, but e-transfers are down for me. Like, you can't e-transfer because all of them go through Rogers. So if only there was another way to send money that didn't go through a centralized server or a banking system. Somebody should think of something to do. I do think it, going through an event like this actually speaks to the centralization of things and, the potential for censorship of things, which is, a big theme in the Discussions platform. When there are moments like this, when the whole internet goes down, and it takes down like so much of just our infrastructure with it through one service provider. Crazy. But I'm glad your internet's back on. I'm glad you're here with us. This is going to be a fun one.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. You're always welcome. And we'll probably see you soon on maybe some of the Monday buzzes. You can come out and just hang out. We'll see you in a very special video that's coming out, I think, end of next week, guys. So keep your eyes out for that. That's going to be fun. Yeah, it's going to be great. But let's dive in, first of all, maybe with just a quick introduction about who you are, what you do with Telos Culture. Feel free to dive a little deeper. Even maybe you can always chat a little bit about what got you into the space or into Telos in the first place. Give us some history on the origins of Brian.
Well, I used to work in the financial industry, but it was just a little too much for me, as in like the relationships weren't very good. It was a tough environment to work in, and people weren't very supportive of each other. And the cryptocurrency community is actually very different. They want to help each other out, especially if you're like into like blockchain networks, etc. And that's how I discovered Discussions. Actually,
Oh,
we
cool.
noticed there was a huge issue with like censorship in social media, and we decided to create something that would help solve that. So we created an immutable platform where everything is being recorded on the Telos blockchain right now. We
That's
actually started on like the EOS blockchain, but due to like the lack of support there, we moved over to Telos, where we received a lot of support via the Telos work system and just developers helping us and guiding us through like their APIs and stuff.
That's amazing. Yeah, tell us about that history. I think that's super cool that you came to Telos, very similar to a lot of other actually social media apps on the platform, like Apix, for example. But you guys also came out of the worker proposal system, right? So how long ago was that? What was that whole process like?
I think we were approached by Douglas about 2 years ago, introducing us to like Telos and like why it was different from EOS. And the main thing was with Block One and EOS, they weren't really providing any support. They said that they were going to help like smaller projects like startup, maybe give funding. We thought that our project was actually like quite good and they qualified for a lot of funding. So they tend to choose like flagship products for as partnerships. So a lot of smaller projects never got any funding, while as like Telos offered like every small project a way to like start building up their community, getting the funds to like start development, and that was a lot of help for us.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, that's good to hear. I mean, I think that's one of the things that does set Telos apart from other networks out there, right? Is that community support and the resources that are available to projects that are building here. So let's dive into discussions a little bit. You talked a little bit about censorship. Maybe you can expand on that a little. Sort of maybe some of the issues that are currently prevalent in maybe some of the Web 2 social media dApps, or what the problems are that you guys are really trying to overcome with discussions.
Oh, okay, for sure. As many other people are aware, there are only like several online platforms that are used by the majority of the population, like namely like Facebook, Google, Twitter. They wield an enormous power over like online speech, and they've shown a tendency to like censor things that are like political or things that they don't want to host anymore. For example, they didn't want to host like President Trump's speech. I'm neither a supporter or against Trump myself, but I do think that everybody should have a way to like speak their mind for free speech. So if you start removing like you start censoring people online, like where do you stop?
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. And that became a big talking point during the whole, Trump fiasco, let's call it, I guess, is like no matter which side you stand, it's great if you're kind of like against him and you're like, wow, this is sick. He's taking off down offline, sick. But then like, again, like you say, where do you draw the line? What if it's the flip side, right? If it is something you do support and you want it out there.
And even with President Trump, he actually had the resources to still like use other platforms to communicate, right?
Exactly.
But as like somebody a little bit smaller or less well known, you're stuck with only the major platforms. You can't just suddenly change to something else and everybody would tune into it, right?
And people don't realize, the fact that there are smaller entities out there that are, censored every day. And you just don't hear about them because they're smaller and they don't have the resources, right?
That's part of the reason. And like the other one is like people, send out legal lawsuits telling you to censor certain things. And we're getting around that by recording everything on chain. So like we really don't have any control over what's being posted. So like that basically separates us from being like legally responsible to a certain degree.
That makes sense. Totally. Very cool. One thing we didn't touch on, I'm going to circle back for a second because I have Friday brain. And I'm realizing that we talked a little bit about discussions and how you got to Discussions, but we didn't talk about what you do with Telos Culture. And I know we're talking about a couple of different things in terms of how we're going to involve Discussions in Telos Culture and do some community activities around it, engagement there, create a forum there. But let's just talk about your general role in Telos Culture, and feel free to dive into the Corduroy Earth side as well. You do a lot of work with Corduroy as well. But what do you do with us? What are you doing here, Brian?
All right. With Telos Culture, I'm really managing the technical side of things. I found like your system administrator. I'm making sure that everything is within specs as a block validator. The most important thing right now is like reducing CPU speeds, essentially, because several months ago there were some block producers that I'm not going to name who were performing a little below the standards, because we're trying to aim for like below half a second for every transaction. And our block producer does that. Everything is within 300 to 400 milliseconds. It works.
Easy stuff. Still don't quite, understand all the ins and outs of the technical side, and that's why you're here. And I think that's super important to us, because that is still the first and foremost role of a block producer, is to just
the technical infrastructure is very important.
Really great technical infrastructure. So we would be lost without you. It's always great to have you to sort of bounce ideas off of on the technical side of things and get more of that perspective.
And some of it involves like communicating with some of the other block producers as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's always ways for us to like improve the infrastructure and network, but we need everybody on board essentially.
Yeah.
So like recently they're testing out the testnet, where like the pass off for each validator is based on like geographical location. So you don't have to, you can reduce the distance between the pass off and make the transactions smoother and faster.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I think there's going to be a lot more changes made like that on like the roles for block producers as we see the USIO plus, soon to be renamed, new software update. I guess that's what it's called. That's coming out. There's probably a better protocol update. That's the word I'm looking for.
The Mandel protocol?
Yeah, the Mandel protocol. Yeah. And so the technical needs for block producers are going to become more and more important because the software is finally going to be updated and, constantly updated on a regular basis, hopefully, which hasn't happened because of the whole Block 1 fiasco. Which, if you want to know more about the Block 1 fiasco and EOS and the Mandel Coalition and all that kind of stuff, there was a great interview that went out recently with Douglas Horn and Eve, who is Eve's the CEO of the EOS Network Foundation. Douglas Horn, Telos chief architect. They had a great chat about it. So, going off on a side tangent here, let's bring it back into discussions. We have discussions now. We are planning to launch a discussions sub-forum or something like that. In that terms I would put on it, but we're going to do a lot of gamification stuff in that community there and bring a lot of the Telos Culture community there. So keep your eyes out for that. But maybe tell us a little bit about just the process of launching discussions and what that looked like. So you guys came to Telos 3 years ago. You were saying 2 years ago?
2.5, 3 years ago, yeah.
Did you have the product already somewhat built out on EOS at that point, or what's it been
like? The
product
was basically built out at that point. Everything was being recorded on the EOS blockchain at that point. The front end stuff was done, back end stuff was done. And then like we just couldn't get much support from the EOS community. It just wasn't a lively community. It's not even just a financial thing. People just weren't too into EOS anymore after like a couple years.
Yeah.
Especially when with like Block 1 dragging their feet. But like moving to Telos, it wasn't just like financial reasons with the works proposal. It was just like it was a much better community to communicate with and to work with. They were much more responsive. They were into the ideas of like new projects, like creating a social media platform.
That's awesome. Very cool.
And then we redid the backend, and now everything's recorded on the Telos blockchain instead.
Amazing. And your token is the Atmos token, correct?
Atmos token, yes. Atmos token basically governs like what you do on discussions.
Amazing. Well, speaking of governance, recently you guys launched the Discussions DAO, which I thought was cool. Can you tell us a little bit about that initiative and what's going on there?
The Discussions DAO is basically for governance reasons. One of our core developers actually left, but we have had a lot of like community support and community developers working on the product. but we wanted to make sure that every Atmos token holder had a say with what they wanted to be developed. And that's why we created this DAO. So essentially anybody with like their staked Atmos tokens can be voting on what features they want in the future, what they want to be us to focus on, whether or not they want to like pay certain people for certain roles. It's all, up to the Atmos token holders now. Cool. As opposed to before where we had like, it was a little bit more centralized where several people made more of the decisions.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a cool way to do it. And no financial advice, guys. Never on this show. But I do want to note that, your token is one of the few altcoins that did not tank during the crypto bear market crash. It's been a stable coin. So that's pretty cool to see, I think. And part of that might have to do with the, utility that's being built out with that DAO there. Not financial advice. Nothing is ever financial advice. Do your own research. But I think that's interesting. So how can people get involved?
You guys can join Discussion.app, view some posts, make some posts. You can even start your own community in it. We base every community off of like hashtags. So, you want to create a community called #Telos. That already exists, but you can create like another community using the hashtags.
Very cool.
Otherwise, you guys can communicate with like our developers and a lot of our core community members on our Discord channel. That's where the majority of the communications is at.
Amazing. I just dropped some links there in the chat there. Do you have a favorite community group or some favorite groups, like hashtags that you like to take part in?
I say I participate mostly in like the discussions and the Atmos groups, but there is one person I follow a lot, which is Faust Alexander. He's been doing a lot of like UI, UX work.
Cool.
Great stuff. He's doing this just because he believes in discussions and he loves working with it.
That's amazing. Well, great shout out. All right.
It's nice to have community members like contribute to your project. So you're not on your own all the time.
Yeah. And I mean, it's cool that the whole ecosystem is built around a discussions platform, right? So your community is pretty active in the infrastructure on a daily basis. That doesn't always happen when your protocol is separate from your Telegram channel. So hopefully we see a lot more projects, I think, in the Telos space. We will see a lot of projects in the Telos space start to adopt like the discussions platform for their community discussions, because it is better than the Discords and the Telegrams that we have out there.
It's a completely open source product, so people can build on top of like what Discussions has built so far. It's all in our GitHub. You guys can copy the backend, utilize what we've developed so far, and create your own version of Discussions with like a different UI or UX, or use the same one if you want to.
Awesome.
Like it has like token wallets. It has like OAuth logins, so people can log in via Facebook, Twitter, Google, or their Discord account. You can make your transactions directly on Discussions. It's pretty well built out feature-wise.
Very user-friendly, I find, too, at least in terms of being easy to use for somebody who's coming from Web 2. So we don't have it for this one, but next time we have you on, we should do a little product demo and get you showing it. Or if anything, the Telos Culture community will just be forced into, toying around with Discussions soon as we bring some activities there. So it's going to be great. Well, fantastic. Unfortunately, we're getting close to time, mainly because I got to get to another event, the Fortis Fireside, the Fortis Friday happening on the Fortis channels. But it's great having you out, Brian. Thanks for joining us. Oh, we couldn't hear you there for a second. Now you're good.
Thanks for having me, Liam.
Of course. I'm glad that we've finally introduced you formally to the Telos Culture community. We will see you again soon, I'm sure. Like I say, we'll come in on the Monday episodes just to hang out. Yeah, always a pleasure. And guys, make sure you go check out Discussions. There is the link in the chat there. And as always, vote for Telos Culture, subscribe, hit the like button, all those things down there, and share with your mom. We'll see you guys again soon. Thanks,